Hello indie game fans! Things are getting real beautiful in this episode of the best looking pixel art indie games of the year, with two extra stylish platformers, one game which absolutely took over my life, and another which perhaps is on a redemption path of its own. So here are the best looking pixel art indie games of 2019, Part 3. The super stylish action game Katana ZERO sports an intriguing premise since you play as a ninja sent to assassinate targets, but there are time dilation mechanics that allow you to do cool stuff like deflect bullets back at enemies. The narrative setup is also very interesting since your character goes to therapy and describes his problems, with there being dream sequences and even silhouetted characters which fill in as you describe your memory. There are also, weirdly enough, dialogue choices, which affects things like whether you have to fight extra enemies, for example, as well as some light stealth mechanics. Being published by Devolver, it will be no surprise that this has that very Hotline Miami feel in terms of death and instant reset, some degree of trial and error for the level, and the brutal action. Seems to have done amazingly well in sales, which in my opinion is helped by the pixel art. StoneTide Age of Pirates is an open-world pirate-themed action-adventure game with exploration, crafting, gathering, and even ship battles. This is a small title which is still in early access, but I do like the look and the updates seem to be coming, so keeping an eye on this one.
The story begins when I was on an expedition through northern Africa. I overheard a troop of Nazis talking about an ancient and horrifying weapon called the Wrath of God. Of course, we had to find it first.
Pathway was near the top of my list of the pixel art games of 2019 that I was most excited about, since it is Indiana Jones themed FTL crossed with XCOM, which is a description that immediately got me on board. However, it released to a mixed reception due to how the game was structured, which required quite a lot of grinding to even get anywhere. This, however, is the redemption story that I was talking about, since as recently as 2 weeks back, the Adventurers Wanted update was released, bringing the game version to 1.1 with more unlockable skills, a new loot system, and even more to explore. The variety in characters, campaigns, and random events is really quite vast, with a tactics combat system with quite the depth to it as well. Definitely worth a revisit, so do let me know if you go back to it.
After a long journey, we finally reached our destination. But that was only just the beginning.
The very Mega Man-inspired Metaloid Origin is a pixel art action platformer that resembles the Blue Bomber in more ways than one, from the look, boss encounters, and more. Pretty neat little platformer that is quite fun on its own, and is also from a Thai indie developer, which is pretty cool. This next game is just a demo, but Backbone Prologue absolutely highlights the majesty of pixel art. Taking place in a noir-inspired detective adventure filled with anthropomorphic animals, the world is fascinating, set in a dystopian, Waldorf version of Vancouver, but oh my god, the lighting effects are beautiful. This is free in conjunction with the full game to be released hopefully next year, so hop in and enjoy.
I guess my story starts way before I even existed.
I started diving when I was really young. By 17, I was accepted onto the GBU team.
Never could stand crowds, so we moved out here.
Photographs is a super strange change of pace for 88Games, makers of the wacky and insane 10 million and You Must Build a Boat. Since this is a narrative tragedy puzzle game telling 5 heart-wrenching stories that can get really dark. Clever puzzles and a good variety in them, but a smaller experience that can be tough emotionally.
So, what's with the gloomy look? Left someone dear behind?
Yeah, you could say that.
Welcome, Agent. Enjoy your trip to the middle of nowhere?
You got yourself one juicy case here. Those 2 lovebirds of yours just turned a double homicide into an anti-terrorism effort.
Great modern point-and-click adventure games are made by a select few studios, and Whispers of a Machine is one which is particularly beautiful, with a very interesting sci-fi setting, starring a cybernetically augmented detective in a post-AI world with forbidden technology.
I am good at what I do.
Wow, they sent a girl? Stop it, Theo. You always say stupid things and get us in trouble.
Look into my eyes. I'll make the pain go away.
Wait. Who are you?
Wait a minute. This can't be the conduit, can it? Those crazy zealots trying to resurrect AI?
The lure of artificial intelligence will never be fully diminished.
Howdy, Pilgrim.
Ooh, here to solve the murders, right?
The conduit believes humans will create God in their image, instead of the other way around.
And what is a god?
Old school point-and-click games are quite the niche genre, but the pedigree here and how this game is put together is excellent.
My god. I think this case just got a lot more complicated.
If you frequent Flash Games websites in the 2000s, you would inevitably come across the Robot Wants series of mini Metroidvanias, and Robot Wants It All brings the collection to Steam. This has 5 mainline Metroidvanias, with Robot Wants Kitty, Robot Wants Puppy, Robot Wants Fishy, Robot Wants Ice Cream, and a new entry, Robot Wants Justice, with a minigame collection in Robot Wants Y. I'll be honest, the nostalgia part of my brain kicked in when I saw this title, and they are great games in themselves, and were perhaps ahead of their time when they were released. Relive a part of gaming history with this. The life-encompassing Forager released way back in April, and is an action-adventure game with resource gathering, automation, crafting, and dungeons. This manages to capture the very compelling gameplay loop of something like a Terraria or Stardew Valley, but also adds in side objectives like helping villagers, Zelda-style combat and dungeons, boss fights, and so on. On the back of a pretty successful launch, developer Hopfrog has continued to support the game with free content despite it not being an early access title, and the combat update just released in October 2019 with a new biome, new areas, items, enemies, pets, railroads and locomotives, and more. I powered through and completed this game within a few days of its launch, and is such a great experience. Highly recommended from me. Killer Chambers is a claustrophobic action puzzle platformer that has you dodging projectiles and traps, traversing the rooms to obtain the King's Crown to save the land. There is an element of memory to this, since the sequence in which the traps activate are not randomized. Each stage also has 3 difficulty levels with 40 rooms in total, and what I really love about this game is the elegance of the design. The controls are very precise, the concept simple, but it does so much with so little in terms of the levels.
For as long as we could remember, this is how it has always been. Devotion is taught through suffering. Drawn to the divine light like moths, sinners will relentlessly advance.
Dark Devotion is a 2D Souls-like action game that has you playing as a Templar, proclaiming your devotion to your god by delving into a deep and dark temple on a cursed pilgrimage. If you are not familiar with the Soulsborne series of games, this often features very deliberate combat with a sense of weight to it, where timing and attack range must be managed very carefully and enemy counterattacks are very punishing.
And all shall meet the same end.
There are also some Metroidvania elements in the forms of an interconnected world with shortcuts back to earlier areas, and this is all emulated pretty well in this game. Stunning art and animation, especially when the elemental effects like fire and lightning get involved, with a very grim dark atmosphere which is done very well. For more of the best indie games, do check out the previous video or click on the recommended playlist, and I will see you after the jump.